He was born in the belly of industrial England, in a coal-mining town where the earth was black and the men who crawled into it came back darker. Eastwood, Nottinghamshire, 1885, a place where the air tasted like ash and the ground trembled with machines, a place where men worked with their bodies and died with their lungs, a place where D.H. Lawrence learned his first truth, that civilization is built on the backs of men who are never allowed to be fully human. His father was a miner, a man of the earth, rough hands, rough voice, rough love, a man who drank, who laughed too loud, who smelled of coal and sweat and something alive. A man who worked in darkness and came home covered in it, a man his mother despised. His father was the body, raw, physical, unrefined, the kind of man who lived below the neck, who thought with his hands, who knew things without needing to understand them.
His mother was different. She was educated, refined, spiritually ambitious. She had married beneath herself and spent the rest of her life resenting it. She poured all her thwarted dreams into her children, into David Herbert most of all. She loved him with a love that felt like salvation and suffocation at once. She wanted him to be better than his father, better than the coal dust and the darkness, better than the body. And so Lawrence grew up split. His father's blood, his mother's mind. His father's physicality, his mother's refinement. His father's instinct, his mother's intellect. The war between them became the war inside him, and that war became his philosophy. He was a sickly child, frail, tubercular, his lungs weak, his body fragile, as if rejecting the very air of industrial England. He would be sick his entire life, coughing blood, fevered, dying slowly from the inside. And yet, this was the man who would write the most visceral, physical, body-worshipping philosophy of the 20th century. This was the paradox, a weak body housing a primal vision, a dying man teaching the world how to live.
He was sensitive, too sensitive. The kind of boy who felt everything too deeply, who watched too closely, who absorbed the tensions in a room like a sponge absorbing water. He watched his mother's quiet rage. He watched his father's exile. He watched the way love could become a cage. He watched the way refined culture could kill something vital. And he learned early that there are two kinds of death, the death of the body and the death of the soul. And he believed the second was worse. His first love was Jessie Chambers, a girl from a neighboring farm. Intelligent, spiritual, pure. They were teenagers, walking through fields, talking about books, about God, about life. She loved his mind. She loved his poetry. She loved the part of him that his mother had cultivated. She wanted spiritual communion. She wanted their love to be ethereal, transcendent, above the flesh. And he wanted her body. He wanted to touch her, to know her, to break through the veil of words and ideas and meet her in the place where language ends. But she couldn't. She was too refined, too frightened, too much like his mother. Their love became a torture. Years of longing, years of talking, years of almost touching. She loved the poet, but feared the man. She wanted his soul, but rejected his blood. And so Lawrence learned his second truth, that spiritual love without the body is not love at all. It is a beautiful lie, a refinement that murders the very thing it claims to honor. A prison built from ideals. His mother had loved him this way, Jessie loved him this way, and both loves nearly destroyed him. He became a teacher. He wrote poetry. He wrote his first novel. And slowly, he began to understand what was killing him. Not the tuberculosis in his lungs,
the tuberculosis in his soul, the severing of mind from body, the worship of thought at the expense of blood, the elevation of spirit at the cost of flesh. He saw it everywhere in England, in the churches, in the schools, in the marriages where husbands and wives slept side by side and never truly touched, in the factories where men became machines, in the drawing rooms where women became decorations. England was dying, not politically, not economically, spiritually. The soul of the nation was being drained, refined, civilized into oblivion, and Lawrence could feel it in his own body. The sickness wasn't just his. It was the sickness of an entire civilization that had forgotten how to be alive. And then he met Frieda von Richthofen-Weekly, a German aristocrat, 6 years older, married with 3 children, sexual, wild, unapologetic, everything Jesse was not, everything his mother was not. She was the body incarnate. She was desire without shame. She was a woman who lived below the neck and didn't apologize for it. They met in 1912. Within weeks, she left her husband and children. Within months, they were wandering Europe together, broke, outcast, alive. They fought violently, physically, screaming, throwing things, clawing at each other. And then they made love. And the cycle repeated. Fight, make love again, create, destroy, rebuild, become. Their marriage was war, and it was religion, and it was the only relationship Lawrence ever believed in.
Because Frieda didn't want his soul. She wanted him. All of him, the mind and the body, the refined poet and the primal animal. She met him at every level and demanded he meet her back. She refused to be domesticated, spiritualized, refined into something safe. She was volcanic. And in her heat, Lawrence finally understood what he had been searching for. Wholeness, the reunion of what civilization had split apart. His philosophy was born from this wound, this reunion, this apocalypse. He would spend the rest of his short life writing it, preaching it, living it, dying for it. He would be banned, exiled, misunderstood, mocked, and he would not stop. Because he had seen something, he had felt something, he had touched the place where the body becomes the soul, and once you've been there, you cannot pretend. You cannot go back to the refined lie. You can only speak the truth, even if the truth destroys you. This is the story of a man who believed we think with our blood, who believed the body is the only honest thing left, who believed sex is the path to God, who believed civilization is killing us slowly by severing us from everything that makes us alive. This is the story of D.H. Lawrence, and it begins in a coal mining town where the earth was black and a boy looked at his father and his mother and knew he would have to choose or find a way to become both. Lawrence didn't write philosophy the way other philosophers did. He didn't build systems. He didn't construct arguments. He didn't care about logic or coherence or academic approval. He wrote from the body, from the gut, from the place where knowing happens before thinking. And his central claim was this: we have forgotten how to think with our blood. Blood consciousness. This was his term, his rebellion, his prophecy. Blood consciousness is the knowing that happens below thought, the wisdom that lives in the body, the intelligence of instinct. It is what animals have, what children have, what indigenous people have, what we had before civilization taught us to live in our heads and die below the neck. You know this feeling. You felt it.
The pull in your gut when something is wrong, even though the logic says it's right. The heat in your spine when someone walks into the room. The way your body knows before your mind catches up. The way desire moves through you like a current you didn't ask for and can't control. The way fear tightens your throat before you've even processed the threat. This is blood consciousness. This is thinking with the body. Lawrence believed we've lost this, that modernity has severed us from our own blood, that we live entirely in our heads now, trapped in mental consciousness, drowning in thoughts, paralyzed by analysis. We think about desire instead of feeling it. We think about life instead of living it. We study the body instead of inhabiting it. We've become ghosts in our own flesh. And this, Lawrence said, is the great sickness of the modern age. Not poverty, not war, not injustice, but disconnection. The severing of the self from itself. The exile of the body. The murder of instinct. We have become refined, civilized, educated, rational, and in the process, we have become dead.
He traced this death back to Christianity, to the doctrine that split soul from body, spirit from flesh, heaven from earth. Christianity taught us that the body is sinful, that desire is dangerous, that the flesh is weak and the spirit is strong. It taught us to transcend the body, to rise above it, to deny it, to punish it. And in doing so, it murdered the very ground of our being. Then came the Enlightenment. Reason as God, logic as salvation, the mind as the only legitimate source of truth. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." Lawrence would have said, "You think, therefore you're dead." Because thinking is not living. Analysis is not experience. Consciousness is not consciousness if it's severed from the body. And then came industrialization, the final blow. Machines replacing bodies, factories replacing fields, cities replacing forests. Men becoming cogs, women becoming decorations. The entire world becoming a mechanism. And in a mechanized world, the body is just another machine, something to be optimized, controlled, disciplined, made efficient. The wisdom of the blood has no place in a factory. Instinct is inefficient. Desire disrupts production. The body must be tamed and disenchanted.
Lawrence looked at modern England and saw a graveyard. Millions of people walking around, functioning, working, marrying, reproducing, and all of them dead. Dead in the place that matters. Dead in the blood. Alive in the head. Corpses below the neck. Going through the motions of life without ever touching life. This is what he meant when he said civilization is a disease. But there was another way, an older way, a darker way. Lawrence called them the dark gods, the pre-Christian gods, the pagan gods, the gods of blood and earth and fire. Dionysus, Pan, Quetzalcoatl, the gods who demanded not obedience but ecstasy, not purity but vitality, not transcendence but incarnation. The gods who said, the body is holy, desire is sacred, the earth is divine. These gods had been buried. Christianity buried them. Reason buried them. Modernity buried them. But Lawrence believed they were not dead. They were sleeping, waiting, pulsing beneath the surface of the civilized world. And he believed the only hope for humanity was to wake them up, to let them rise, to reclaim the religion of the body. This was not intellectualism. This was not metaphor. Lawrence meant it literally. He believed there is a form of consciousness that exists in the solar plexus, in the spine, in the genitals, a knowing that is deeper and truer than anything the brain can produce. He called it the dark sun, the light that comes from below, the fire in the blood. You access this consciousness through the body, through physical presence, through sensation, through sex, through dance, through anything that drops you out of your head and into your flesh. This is why Lawrence worshipped sex,
Not because he was a hedonist, not because he was obsessed with pleasure, but because sex, when it's real, when it's not performed or thought about or analyzed, is the place where blood consciousness awakens. It is the doorway to the dark gods. But here is where Lawrence becomes dangerous, because he didn't just want to awaken blood consciousness in individuals, he wanted to awaken it in society. He wanted a new religion, a new order, a return to hierarchy, to aristocracy, to leaders who ruled not through votes, but through vitality. He hated democracy. He hated equality. He believed the masses were spiritually dead and needed to be led by those who were still alive. This is the shadow side of Lawrence, his flirtation with authoritarianism, his romanticization of power, his belief that some people are more vital, more alive, more worthy of leadership than others. He never became a fascist, but he came close. And this is the danger of blood consciousness, without the check of reason, without the balance of compassion, without the humility that comes from recognizing your own fallibility.
Lawrence was brilliant. Lawrence was prophetic. Lawrence saw things no one else saw. But Lawrence was also wounded, angry, desperate. He wanted to save the world, and he was dying. He wanted to resurrect the dark gods, and he was living in a civilization that had no room for them. He wanted to teach people how to live, and most people just wanted him to shut up. And so his philosophy is a gift and a warning. The gift: come back to your body, listen to your blood, trust your instinct, let desire move through you without shame, reclaim the dark gods, remember that you are animal, earth, fire. The warning: blood consciousness without wisdom becomes tyranny. Instinct without compassion becomes cruelty. The worship of vitality without humility becomes fascism. Lawrence knew this tension. He lived it. He never resolved it. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the call to blood consciousness is not a call to purity or certainty or a new system. Maybe it's a call to wholeness, to the reunion of mind and body, thought and instinct.
Civilization and wildness. Apollo and Dionysus. The light sun and the dark sun. The mother and the father. The split that tore him apart and that tears us apart still. We live in our heads. We are drowning in thought. We have bodies we do not inhabit, desires we do not trust, instincts we have been taught to fear. Lawrence is asking, what would happen if you came back? What would happen if you listened to the blood? What would happen if you stopped thinking about your life and started living it? The dark gods are knocking. Can you hear them? Lawrence believed sex is religion. Not a religion. Religion itself. The only honest form of worship left. The only place where modern humans still touch something sacred. The only doorway through which the dark gods can still enter. And this was not metaphor. Lawrence meant it. Sex, when it's real, is the communion. The body is the temple, and the phallus is the priest.
People misunderstand this. They think Lawrence was fixated on the physical for its own sake, as if he were chasing pleasure instead of meaning, as if the body were his drug, not his doorway. But they miss the point entirely. They're wrong. Lawrence hated pornography. He hated the reduction of sex to performance, to mechanics, to images consumed by the mind. Pornography is mental. Pornography is the opposite of what Lawrence meant by sex. Pornography is sex severed from the blood. What Lawrence meant by sex was this: the moment when two people stop being minds and become bodies. The moment when thought dissolves. The moment when the ego shatters. The moment when you are no longer performing, analyzing, controlling. The moment when something moves through you that is older than you, deeper than you, more intelligent than anything your brain could produce. The moment when the blood speaks and you listen with your entire being.
This is why Lawrence called the phallus sacred. Not because it's a weapon, not because it's a tool of domination, but because it is the organ through which this intelligence flows. The phallus is not about power over another person. It is about surrender to something greater. When Lawrence writes about phallic consciousness, he is writing about the moment when a man stops trying to control the act and lets the act move through him. When he becomes a conduit, when he becomes the dark god entering the temple. And the woman, in Lawrence's vision, is not passive. She is not the object. She is the earth receiving the seed. She is the fire meeting the fire. She is the force that either accepts or rejects the offering. A woman, Lawrence believed, knows in her body whether a man is truly present or merely performing. She knows whether he is bringing the dark god or just bringing his ego, and her body responds accordingly. Opens or closes, melts or hardens, becomes volcanic or becomes stone. This is why Lawrence's women are never gentle, domesticated, or decorative. They are elemental, they are storms, they are fires, they are forces of nature. Ursula Brangwen, Constance Chatterley, Kate Leslie, these are not women who wait to be saved. These are women who devour, who demand, who refuse anything less than full presence. These are women who will destroy a man who comes to them half alive. And Lawrence knew this because he lived it, because Frida taught him. Frida von Richthofen-Weekly, the volcanic wife, the woman who saved him and nearly destroyed him in the same breath. She was German aristocracy, 6 years older, married with 3 children when they met. And when Lawrence looked at her, he saw something he had never seen in Jessie, in his mother, in any woman before her. A woman who was not afraid of the body. A woman who did not need to spiritualize desire to make it acceptable. A woman who wanted sex and didn't apologize for wanting it.
She left her husband in 1912, abandoned her children, walked away from respectability, from security, from everything a woman was supposed to value. And she did it for Lawrence, for this frail, intense, tubercular teacher who had nothing to offer her but poverty and passion. They ran away together, wandering through Italy, through Germany, through Switzerland. No money, no plan, just desire and defiance. Their marriage was a battleground. They fought constantly, physically, violently, screaming matches that lasted hours, throwing plates, scratching, hitting. She would storm out. He would chase her. She would take lovers. He would rage. She would laugh at his rage. He would collapse, and then they would come back together. And the sex, after the fights, was not reconciliation. It was continuation. The fight continued in the bed. The war became worship. The destruction became creation. This is what Lawrence meant by polarity. He didn't want peace in a relationship. He wanted fire meeting fire. He wanted two forces that did not merge but collided. He wanted the friction that creates energy. He believed that most modern marriages were dead because the couple had stopped fighting. They had negotiated a truce. They had domesticated each other. They had smoothed out all the rough edges, and what remained was two ghosts, sharing a house. Frida refused domestication. She refused to be the supportive wife, the muse, the woman behind the great man. She had her own fire, and she demanded he meet it. And when he couldn't, when he retreated into his head, into his ideas, into his control, she would wound him. Deliberately, she knew how to break through his intellectual defenses and drag him back into his body, sometimes with cruelty, always with honesty.
And Lawrence needed this, because without Frida, he would have remained trapped in the pattern his mother had set. The pattern of spiritual love without body. The pattern of refinement that murders vitality. Frida broke that pattern. She was too physical, too demanding, too alive to let him hide in his mind. She forced him to be a body. She forced him to surrender. And in that surrender, he found his philosophy. But there was another woman. Jessie Chambers. The first love. The impossible love. The woman who loved his mind and feared his flesh. They met when Lawrence was 16. She was a farmer's daughter, intelligent, spiritual, pure. They would walk through fields, sit under trees, talk for hours about books, about poetry, about God. She adored him. She believed in his genius. She wanted to be his companion, his intellectual equal, his soul's mirror.
And Lawrence wanted her body, wanted to break through the veil of all those beautiful conversations and touch her, know her, enter her. But she couldn't. She was too refined, too frightened. She had been taught that desire was dangerous, that the body was sinful, that love should be ethereal. She wanted spiritual communion. She wanted their love to transcend the flesh. Their relationship lasted years, years of longing, years of almost touching, years of agony. He would try to kiss her, and she would pull away. He would reach for her, and she would flinch. She loved him. She wanted him. But she couldn't let herself want him physically. And so their love became a torture. A beautiful, terrible, soul-destroying torture. Lawrence wrote about her in Sons and Lovers. She is Miriam, the girl who loves Paul's soul but rejects his body. The girl who makes love spiritual to avoid making it real. The girl who represents everything Lawrence came to believe was killing England, the elevation of spirit at the expense of flesh, the refinement that murders the living thing.
And Jessie read the book. She saw herself in Miriam. She saw how Lawrence had portrayed her, and she was devastated. She felt betrayed, exposed, misunderstood. She believed he hadn't seen her. But Lawrence had seen her. He had seen her fear. He had seen the way spiritual love can become a cage. He had seen the way refinement can become cruelty. And he had to write it, because if he didn't, he would have remained trapped in that pattern forever. Then there was Dorothy Brett, the deaf aristocratic painter who followed Lawrence to New Mexico. She was in love with him. Everyone knew it. Frida knew it. Lawrence knew it. Brett herself never denied it. She worshipped him. She called him a prophet. She painted his vision. She followed him across continents. And Lawrence never touched her. Why? Because Brett wanted to be the disciple, not the equal. She wanted to worship, not to collide. She wanted to sit at the feet of the master, not to meet him as fire meets fire. And Lawrence, for all his talk of phallic consciousness, for all his worship of the body, could not cross that line with her. Because what he needed in a woman was not devotion, it was challenge, and Brett offered only devotion.
So she remained in orbit, the moon circling the dark sun, the woman who loved the prophet but could not become his equal. And in her loneliness, in her unreturned desire, she became a symbol of the tragic side of Lawrence's vision, that the prophet is always alone, that the man who speaks for the dark gods is exiled by those very gods. That intensity of this kind burns too hot for most people to stand close. But back to the vision itself, the phallic vision, the belief that sex is sacred. Lawrence's greatest scandal, his most misunderstood work, was Lady Chatterley's Lover. Published in 1928, banned immediately, prosecuted for obscenity, not allowed in England or America for decades. Why? Because Lawrence wrote about sex. Not as something dirty or shameful, not as something to giggle about or hide, but as something holy.
The story is simple. Constance Chatterley is married to Clifford, an English aristocrat who was paralyzed in the war. Paralyzed not just physically, but spiritually. He is a man of the mind, intellectual, refined, successful, and completely dead below the neck. Their marriage is a polite arrangement. They talk, they share a house, they maintain appearances, and Constance is dying, slowly, quietly, the way a plant dies when you forget to water it. Then she meets Mellors, the gamekeeper, working class, physical, embodied, a man who lives in his body, who thinks with his hands, who speaks rarely, because he knows that some things cannot be said, only felt. They begin an affair, and the affair is not about pleasure. It is about resurrection. Constance is coming back to life. Her body is waking up. The blood is moving again. Lawrence describes their lovemaking with a tenderness and honesty that scandalized the world. He writes about bodies without shame. He uses the words that people whisper, the words that are banned from polite conversation.
The establishment couldn't tolerate this, because Lawrence was saying something dangerous, that the body knows more than the church, that desire is wiser than doctrine, that sex between two people who are truly present is more sacred than any ritual performed in a cathedral, that the gamekeeper making love to the lady in the forest is closer to God than the paralyzed aristocrat reading philosophy in his study. And he was right. And they knew he was right. And that's why they banned him. Because if people started believing that the body was sacred, that sex was holy, that desire was divine, then the entire structure of control would collapse.
You cannot control people who trust their blood. You cannot domesticate people who worship the dark gods. You cannot refine people who have remembered they are animals. Lawrence knew this. He knew what he was doing. He knew the cost, and he wrote it anyway, because he believed the truth was more important than safety, because he believed people were dying from respectability, because he believed the only way to save the soul was to return to the body. The phallus is sacred. The woman is the earth. Sex is the communion. The body is the temple. This is Lawrence's gospel. This is his heresy. This is the teaching that got him banned, exiled, misunderstood, mocked. And this is the teaching that people are finally starting to hear. Because we live in a world of dead sex, pornography, performance, technique, apps, swipes, bodies consumed by eyes that never touch, desire severed from presence, sex severed from soul.
Lawrence is calling us back, calling us to the forest, to the dark, to the place where thought dissolves and the blood speaks, to the moment when you are no longer performing but becoming, to the sex that is not about pleasure but about presence, to the communion that happens when two people stop being minds and remember they are flesh. This is the religion. This is the path. This is the doorway through which the dark gods still enter, and it is open if you dare to walk through it. Lawrence fled Europe. He had to. England was suffocating him. The gray skies, the coal smoke, the refined conversations, the polite murders. The entire civilization was a tomb, and he was dying inside it. He needed sun. He needed earth. He needed a place where the dark gods still lived. He needed Mexico.
He arrived in 1923, 40 years old, tubercular, feverish, broke. And the moment he crossed into that landscape, the deserts, the mountains, the alien sky, something in him shifted. He felt it, the presence of something older, something that Europe had buried centuries ago. The gods were still alive here, not in cathedrals, not in books, but in the earth, in the blood of the people, in the rituals that had survived beneath the surface of Christianity. Mexico was not gentle. It was violent, chaotic, beautiful, terrifying. Lawrence loved it and feared it in equal measure. He saw in the indigenous people something he had been searching for his entire life. Blood consciousness still intact, a way of being that had not been severed by industrialization, by Christianity, by the tyranny of the rational mind. These people still thought with their bodies. They still danced for the gods. They still knew that the earth was alive.
And Lawrence wanted this for Europe. He wanted this for himself. He wanted to resurrect the religion of the body, the worship of the dark sun, the communion with forces that Christianity had named demons. He wrote the plumed serpent as a vision, as a prophecy, as an attempt to imagine what it would look like if the dark gods returned. The novel is strange, mythic, almost hallucinatory. It tells the story of Kate Leslie, an Irish woman who travels to Mexico and becomes involved with a movement to resurrect Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, the Aztec god. The leaders of this movement, Ramon and Cipriano, are not politicians. They are priests. They are enacting a new religion, a religion of blood sacrifice, of ritual, of ecstasy, a religion that demands not belief, but embodiment, a religion that says, the gods do not live in heaven, they live in your body, and you must become the god.
This is Lawrence at his most dangerous, because he is not writing metaphor, he is writing prophecy. He genuinely believed that Europe needed a new religion, that Christianity was dead, that rationalism was dead, that democracy was dead, that what humanity needed was not more ideas, but a return to the dark gods. And he believed this return would require leaders, not elected leaders, not reasonable leaders, but charismatic, vital, dangerous leaders who ruled not through votes, but through the force of their blood consciousness. This is where Lawrence flirts with fascism. Not explicitly. He never joined a fascist party. He never endorsed Hitler or Mussolini. But the ideas are there. The worship of vitality, the belief in natural hierarchy, the contempt for the masses, the longing for a leader who embodies the dark god. Lawrence wanted aristocracy of the blood, not of birth or wealth. He wanted leaders who were more alive, more vital, more connected to the primal forces than the rest of humanity.
And this is deeply problematic, because blood consciousness without humility becomes tyranny. Vitality without compassion becomes cruelty. The worship of the strong becomes the oppression of the weak. Lawrence saw the spiritual sickness of democracy, the way it flattens, the way it domesticates, the way it makes everyone mediocre. But he didn't see the danger of his alternative. He didn't see how easily the call for vital leaders becomes the call for dictators. Mexico tested him. The indigenous people he romanticized did not welcome him. They saw him as another white man with ideas, another foreigner who came to their land to find himself. The revolution he imagined did not happen. The dark gods did not return in the way he envisioned. And Lawrence, sick and feverish and increasingly isolated, began to realize that you cannot resurrect dead gods by will alone, that the old world is gone, that nostalgia, no matter how passionate, cannot bring it back.
But there was something else he found in Mexico, something harder to name, a quality of presence, a way the light fell, a way the earth felt beneath his feet, a sense that the ground was still alive in a way that English soil was not. He would walk through the desert and feel something watching him, not a person, not an animal, something older, the land itself, the dark sun beneath the ground. He wrote about this in his essays, in his letters, in fragments that never quite became a coherent philosophy. He wrote about the rattlesnake he saw and how it looked at him with ancient eyes. He wrote about the drums in the night, the indigenous ceremonies he was allowed to witness from a distance. He wrote about the feeling of standing in that landscape and knowing that the gods were not metaphors. They were presences, and they were waiting. This is Lawrence at his most mystical. Most people dismiss this as romanticism, as primitivism, as a white man projecting his fantasies onto a culture he didn't understand.
And there is truth in that critique. Lawrence did romanticize indigenous people. He did project his own spiritual hunger onto them. He did see what he wanted to see and ignore the rest. But there is also something else, something Lawrence genuinely touched. The sense that modernity has severed us from something essential, that in our rush to be rational, civilized, progressive, we have lost our connection to the earth, to the body, to the dark gods that Lawrence believed were not myths, but forces. And whether you call them gods, or instincts, or the unconscious, or the blood, the fact remains, we have lost something, and we are dying from that loss. Mexico did not save Lawrence. It did not cure his tuberculosis. It did not resurrect the dark gods, but it gave him a vision, a glimpse of what life could be if we remembered we are not just minds. If we remembered we are animals, earth, fire. If we remembered that the ground beneath our feet is alive, and the sun above our heads is not just a ball of gas, but a living force.
He left Mexico in 1925. He never returned. He wandered through Italy, through France, through Switzerland, always searching, always sick, always believing that somewhere, somehow, the dark gods could be awakened, and always confronting the hard truth that he was a man out of time, that the world he wanted was gone, that the civilization he hated was the only one left, that the only revolution available to him was the revolution inside himself. And maybe that's the real teaching of Mexico. Not that we should resurrect Aztec gods or return to pre-industrial life, but that the search for the dark gods must finally turn inward, that the landscape we need to reclaim is not Mexico or Europe or any external place. It is the body. It is the blood. It is the place inside you where the dark sun still pulses. It is the wilderness you carry with you wherever you go. He left Mexico in 1925. He never returned. He wandered through Italy, through France, through Switzerland, always searching, always sick, always believing that somewhere, somehow, the dark gods could be awakened, and always confronting the hard truth that he was a man out of time, that the world he wanted was gone, that the civilization he hated was the only one left, that the only revolution available to him was the revolution inside himself. And maybe that's the real teaching of Mexico. Not that we should resurrect Aztec gods or return to pre-industrial life, but that the search for the dark gods must finally turn inward, that the landscape we need to reclaim is not Mexico or Europe or any external place. It is the body. It is the blood. It is the place inside you where the dark sun still pulses. It is the wilderness you carry with you wherever you go. Lawrence went to Mexico looking for the dark gods, and he found them, not in the landscape, not in the people, but in himself, in the fever, in the sickness, in the loneliness, in the desperate, fevered certainty that life is more than what civilization allows, that the body is sacred, that sex is holy, that desire is divine, that the dark gods are not dead. They are sleeping inside you, waiting, knocking. Can you hear them? Before Lawrence became the prophet of blood consciousness, before he found Frida, before he fled to Mexico, he had to survive his mother. And surviving his mother meant writing Sons and Lovers, the novel that nearly killed him to write, the novel that is not fiction but confession, the novel that is the wound beneath all his philosophy. Gertrude Morel is the mother, refined, educated, spiritually ambitious. She married a miner, a mistake, a lowering, and she spent the rest of her life punishing him for it.
Punishing herself for it. She did not love her husband. She despised him. His roughness, his drinking, his physicality, his happiness. She saw in him everything she hated. The body without the mind, instinct without refinement, life without higher purpose. And so she turned to her children, to her sons especially. William first, then Paul. She poured into them everything she could not give her husband, her dreams, her refinement, her love, her soul. She loved them with a love that felt like salvation. And it was also a cage, because the love came with conditions. You must be better than your father. You must rise above him. You must become what I could not become. You must live for me. Paul Morel is Lawrence. There is no distance here. This is autobiography disguised as fiction. Paul is the sensitive boy, the one who feels too much, the one who watches his mother's quiet rage and his father's exile, and knows he will have to choose.
And he chooses his mother. Of course he does. She is the light. She is the warmth. She is the one who understands him. She is the one who sees his genius. She is the one who loves him. And his father becomes the shadow, the man to be escaped, the man whose blood runs in Paul's veins whether he likes it or not. Paul watches his father come home from the mines, covered in coal dust, and feels shame. Shame that this is his father. Shame that this rough, physical, inarticulate man is where he comes from. He sides with his mother. He becomes her ally, her companion, her reason to live. And this is where the sickness begins, because a mother's love should set you free. It should prepare you to leave, to become, to find your own life. But Gertrude's love does the opposite. It binds, it holds, it demands. She does not say this out loud. She does not need to. Paul feels it, the unspoken expectation, the quiet guilt whenever he thinks of leaving, the sense that if he abandons her, she will die. And he cannot let her die, because if she dies, he dies.
Then comes Miriam, Jesse Chambers in real life, the girl Paul meets when he is 16. She is intelligent, spiritual, pure.
She loves literature, she loves God, she loves Paul. She adores him. She believes in his genius. She wants to be his companion, his equal, his soul's mirror. And Paul loves her, or thinks he does, because what he feels for Miriam is the same thing he feels for his mother, a spiritual connection, a meeting of minds, a love that happens above the neck. But Paul also wants Miriam's body. He wants to touch her, to know her, to break through the veil of all those beautiful conversations. And Miriam cannot. She is terrified, not of Paul, of her own desire. She has been taught that the body is sinful, that sex is dangerous, that love should be ethereal. She wants spiritual communion. She wants their love to transcend the flesh. And so she gives Paul her soul and withholds her body. And Paul, trapped between his mother and Miriam, begins to fracture, because Miriam is too much like his mother. Both want his mind. Both want his spirit. Both want him to be refined, elevated, above the body, and neither can give him what he needs, a woman who will meet him in the flesh, who will pull him out of his head and into his blood, who will say, "I want you, all of you, the body and the soul." He tries to break free from Miriam. He tries to hurt her. He becomes cruel. He tells her she is too spiritual, too pure, too cold. He accuses her of not loving him physically. And she tries. She finally gives herself to him. But it is a disaster, because she gives her body as a sacrifice, as something she is supposed to do, as a duty. And Paul feels it. He feels her fear. He feels her reluctance. And he knows this is not what he needs. This is not communion. This is martyrdom. So he turns to Clara Dawes, a married woman, older, sexual, free. She is everything Miriam is not. She is the body. She is desire without shame. She is the woman who can meet Paul physically without needing to spiritualize it.
And for a while, Paul thinks this is the answer. He thinks Clara will save him. He throws himself into the affair with desperation. He needs her to prove that he is not his mother's prisoner, that he can love a woman who is not spiritual, that he can live in his body. But Clara cannot save him either, because Paul does not love her. He uses her, he needs her, he desires her, but he does not love her, because his love is still given to his mother. His mother is the one who holds his soul. Clara has his body. Miriam has his mind, but his mother has everything. And then his mother gets sick. Cancer. Slow, painful, inevitable. And Paul watches her die, month by month, week by week. He sits by her bedside. He holds her hand. He whispers to her. And he feels something terrible. Relief. Relief that she is dying. Relief that he will finally be free. And guilt. Crushing, unbearable guilt. Because how can you feel relief at your mother's death when you love her more than anyone in the world? He gives her the final dose of morphine, intentionally, to end her suffering, to end his own. And she dies. And Paul is free. And Paul is shattered. Because freedom from a devouring love feels like death. The cage is gone, and now there is nothing. No direction, no purpose, no reason to live. The novel ends with Paul walking away from his mother's grave, toward the lights of the town. Walking toward life. But Lawrence does not tell us if Paul survives, if he finds a way to love a woman who is not his mother, if he ever escapes the pattern. Because Lawrence himself did not know. He was writing the book to find out. Sons and Lovers is Lawrence's diagnosis of his own wound, the wound of the mother who devours,
the wound of the son who cannot love a woman because his heart is still given to his mother, the wound of the split between spirit and flesh, between refined love and physical love, between the mother and the father. And the wound has no easy resolution, because you cannot simply reject your mother. You cannot simply choose the body over the spirit. You cannot simply walk away. You have to integrate. You have to find a way to honor both the mother's refinement and the father's vitality, the mind and the body, the spirit and the flesh. This is what Lawrence spent the rest of his life trying to do. And this is why Frida mattered so much. Because Frida was the woman who was neither Gertrude nor Miriam. Frida was the woman who refused to be only spiritual or only physical. She was both. She was whole. And in her wholeness, she gave Lawrence permission to become whole. But before Frida, there was the mother. And the mother's love nearly destroyed him. This is the shadow side of love. The love that binds instead of freeing. The love that demands instead of giving. The love that says, "You are mine. You will always be mine. And even when I die, you will carry me inside you like a ghost." Paul Morel carries his mother's ghost. And Lawrence carried her too. Even after he found Frida, even after he wrote his philosophy of blood consciousness, even after he became the prophet of the body, the mother was still there, in the wound, in the guilt, in the pattern he could never fully escape. This is why Sons and Lovers is the key to understanding Lawrence, because beneath all his talk of vitality, of blood consciousness, of the dark gods, there is a boy who loved his mother too much, a boy who had to kill her to survive, and a man who spent the rest of his life trying to resurrect what he killed, trying to find a way to be both refined and primal, both mind and body, both his mother's son and his father's son, both the poet and the animal. The mother who devours is not a villain. She is tragic. She loves her son. She wants the best for him. She would die for him. And in a sense, she does. She gives him everything, her dreams, her ambitions, her soul. And in doing so, she empties herself and she empties him, because a mother's love should prepare a son to leave, and Gertrude's love prepared Paul to stay.
This is the wound beneath the philosophy. This is the sickness beneath the vision. This is the cage Lawrence spent his life trying to escape. And this is the question that haunts every person who has ever been loved too much, held too tightly, needed too deeply. How do you honor the love that shaped you without letting it destroy you? How do you leave without betraying? How do you become yourself when someone else has poured their soul into yours? Lawrence never fully answered this question, but he lived it. He wrote it. He bled it onto every page. And in that bleeding, he gave us permission to see our own wounds, to name them, to stop pretending they are not there, because you cannot heal what you will not see. And Lawrence saw everything, even when it destroyed him.
The Rainbow is a novel about awakening. 3 generations of women waking up, slowly, painfully, each one pushing a little further than the last, each one refusing a little more of what the world demands, each one moving closer to the question that Lawrence believed was the only question worth asking. Am I alive, or am I performing life? The Brangwyn family lives on a farm in the English Midlands. They are rooted in the earth. They work with their hands. They live in rhythm with the seasons. This is the old world, the world before industrialization, the world where people still had blood consciousness. But even here, In this pre-modern idyll, Lawrence shows the rot beginning, because even here, women are caged. Even here, desire is policed. Even here, life is domesticated.
Lydia Brangwyn is the first generation. Polish, foreign, mysterious. She marries Tom Brangwyn, and they have a passionate, physical marriage. They fight, they make love, they struggle to understand each other. But there is vitality here. There is blood. Tom is a man of the earth. Lydia is a woman of depth. Together they are alive. But Lydia remains contained. She is a wife, a mother. She does not break the boundaries of her role. Then comes Ursula, Lydia's granddaughter. And Ursula is different. Ursula refuses. She is intelligent, ambitious, hungry. She wants more than marriage, more than children, more than the farm. She wants education. She wants independence. She wants to know herself. And the world does not know what to do with a woman who wants these things. Ursula becomes a teacher. She falls in love with Anton Skrybensky, a soldier. He is conventional, respectable, safe.
He wants to marry her. He wants her to be his wife, to settle into the role women are supposed to fill. And Ursula tries. She almost accepts. But something in her rebels. Some voice deeper than social expectation says, "This is not enough. This man is not alive. This life is death." She rejects him. And in rejecting him, she rejects the entire structure. She refuses to be domesticated. She refuses to shrink herself to fit inside someone else's vision. She stands alone, unmarried, uncertain, free, and terrified. Because freedom without direction is a kind of falling. You are no longer held by the old structures, but you have not yet found the new ones. You are suspended, untethered, waiting. And then she sees the rainbow, the symbol, the promise, the arc across the sky that says, there is something beyond this. There is a world being born, there is a new way of being human that has not yet arrived, but is coming. The rainbow is not an answer. It is a vision, a hope, a refusal to accept that the old death is the only option.
Women in Love continues where the rainbow ends. Ursula is older now, still searching, still refusing, and she meets Rupert Birkin, a man who is also searching, a man who is also refusing, a man who hates the deadness of modern life as much as she does. Birkin is Lawrence's voice in the novel. He speaks Lawrence's philosophy. He rages against the spiritual death of England. He demands something deeper than conventional love. He wants what Lawrence called star equilibrium. Two beings in orbit, separate but connected, not merged but resonant. Ursula and Birkin fight, constantly, because what they want from each other is impossible. They want to be together without losing themselves. They want intimacy without domestication. They want love without cage. And this is the hardest thing, because most people choose one or the other. They choose freedom and remain alone, or they choose connection and lose themselves. Birkin and Ursula are trying to do both, and it nearly destroys them.
But there is another couple in the novel, Gerald Critch and Gudrun Brangwyn, Ursula's sister. And these two are the shadow version, the apocalypse instead of the rebirth. Gerald is the industrial man, the mine owner, the man who has turned his body into a machine and his soul into efficiency. He is handsome, powerful, successful, and completely dead inside. Gudrun is an artist, sharp, cruel, perceptive. She is drawn to Gerald because she sees his death. She wants to touch it, to possess it, to destroy what is already destroyed. Their relationship is not love. It is war. It is two people using each other to feel something, anything, even if that something is pain. They go to the Alps, snow and mountains and cold light. Gerald skiing through the frozen landscape, pushing himself harder and harder, as if he can outrun his own emptiness. Gudrun watching him with contempt and fascination. The affair intensifies, becomes violent, becomes unbearable. And then Gerald walks out into the snow, alone, at night, and he keeps walking. And the cold takes him, and he dies, frozen, alone, in the mountains. Lawrence writes Gerald's death as a metaphor. Gerald is the modern man, the man who has severed himself from blood consciousness, the man who has become a machine, the man who has nothing left inside except the will to keep moving. And when he finally stops, when he finally faces the emptiness, there is nothing there, just cold, just death.
This is the apocalypse Lawrence saw coming, not bombs, not war, but spiritual death. The freezing of the soul, the slow transformation of humans into mechanisms, the loss of vitality, the loss of blood, the loss of the dark gods. Gerald is all of us if we continue down this path, if we continue to refine, to civilize, to rationalize, to mechanize. We become efficient. We become successful. We become dead. Birkin mourns Gerald, not just the man, but what he represented. The possibility of male friendship, the possibility of two men connecting soul to soul, without shame, without competition, without the domestication that comes from needing to perform masculinity. Birkin loved Gerald, and Gerald could not love him back, because Gerald did not know how to love. He knew how to control, he knew how to perform, he knew how to succeed. But he did not know how to surrender. And without surrender, there is no connection. There is only isolation.
Ursula asks Birkin why he mourns. She asks if their love is not enough. And Birkin says something that still echoes, that he wanted both. He wanted the love of a woman and the friendship of a man. He wanted Ursula, and he wanted Gerald. He wanted the erotic connection and the brotherly connection, and the world could not give him both, and so he lost one, and something in him will always mourn that loss. This is Lawrence at his most vulnerable, because Birkin's mourning is Lawrence's mourning. Lawrence wanted deep male friendship. He wanted men to be able to love each other without fear, without shame, without the need to make it sexual or competitive or safe. He wanted blood brotherhood. He wanted the dark gods to be shared between men as well as between men and women. And he never found it. Every male friendship he tried to build ended in misunderstanding, betrayal, distance. Women in Love ends with Ursula and Birkin together. Not happily ever after, but together. Still fighting, still searching, still trying to find a way to be whole. They have survived the apocalypse that killed Gerald and Gudrun. They have found a way to be separate and connected. They have found star equilibrium, and it is fragile. It is uncertain. It is not a resolution. It is a beginning. Because this is what Lawrence believed, that the old world is dead, that the rainbow is a promise, not a guarantee,
that the new way of being human has not yet been born, that we are living in the apocalypse right now, that most people, like Gerald, will freeze in the emptiness. But a few, like Ursula and Birkin, will survive, will find each other, will create new ways of loving, new ways of being, new ways of staying alive in a world that is designed to kill the soul.
The apocalypse is not coming. It is here. It has been here since industrialization, since the death of the dark gods, since the severing of body from spirit. We are living in the frozen Alps. We are walking through the snow. And the question is, will you keep walking until you freeze? Or will you turn back toward the fire? Will you become Gerald? Or will you become Ursula? Lawrence offers no easy answers. He offers no salvation. He offers only the vision of two people who refuse to die, two people who fight their way through the apocalypse and find on the other side a fragile, uncertain, beautiful possibility that love, real love, blood love, can survive the death of the old world, that the rainbow is real, that the dark gods are not dead, they are waiting, inside you, in the place where the blood still moves, in the place where you are still, against all odds, alive.
Lawrence was dying. He had always been dying. The tuberculosis had been with him since childhood, burning slowly through his lungs, stealing his breath, turning his body into a furnace. But now, in his final years, the dying accelerated. He was 43, then 44, and he knew he would not see 45. He wandered, Italy, France, Switzerland, Spain, always searching for the right climate, the right light, the place where his lungs could breathe a little easier. But there was no such place. The sickness was not just in his lungs, it was in the world. England was dying, Europe was dying, civilization was dying, and Lawrence, the prophet of blood consciousness, was dying with it. He wrote furiously, desperately, as if the words could keep him alive, as if getting the vision onto paper could prevent the vision from dying with him. He wrote essays, he wrote poems, he wrote Lady Chatterley's Lover, his final great novel, his last attempt to say what he had been trying to say his entire life, that sex is sacred, that the body is holy, that desire is the only honest thing left in a world of lies.
The book was banned immediately. England would not allow it. America would not allow it. It was prosecuted for obscenity, called pornographic, called degenerate, called a threat to public morals. And Lawrence, sick and exiled and furious, knew exactly what was happening. They were not banning the book because it was obscene. They were banning it because it was true, because it threatened the order, because if people started believing that the body was sacred and desire was divine, then the entire structure of control would collapse. He had been censored before. The rainbow had been banned in 1915, copies seized and burned, called obscene, called immoral. Lawrence had watched his work destroyed by the same civilization he was trying to save. And now, at the end of his life, it was happening again. The prophet was being silenced. The vision was being buried. And Lawrence was too sick to fight back.
Frida was with him. She had been with him through everything, through poverty, through exile, through illness, through rage, through the fights that lasted for hours and the love that lasted for days. She was volcanic still. She was alive still. And she watched him die, slowly, painfully, gasping for breath, coughing blood.
his body finally giving out after decades of rebellion. They were in Vennes, France, a villa, sunlight, warmth, the Mediterranean light that Lawrence loved, but even the light could not save him. He lay in bed, feverish, delirious, writing final letters, writing final poems, trying to hold on to the vision even as his body let go. He wrote about death. He wrote about the dark sun. He wrote about the ship of death, the journey into the underworld, the return to the dark gods. He was not afraid. He had spent his entire life preparing for this.
He had touched death 1,000 times in his work. He had descended into the underground. He had faced the abyss. And now he was stepping into it. Fully. Finally. He died on March 2nd, 1930, 44 years old. Frida was holding his hand. The body that had carried the vision for so long finally stopped. The breath that had spoken the prophecy finally stilled. The prophet was dead, and the world did not notice. A few obituaries, a few literary tributes, but mostly silence, because Lawrence had been too dangerous, too uncomfortable, too honest for the world to love him while he lived. Frida had him cremated. She took his ashes, and she did something extraordinary. She brought them to New Mexico, to the land where Lawrence had felt the dark gods still lived, to the place where he had tried to resurrect the plumed serpent. She built a small shrine. She scattered some of his ashes there, and she mixed the rest into the concrete of the chapel.
Lawrence, the prophet of blood consciousness, the man who hated civilization, the man who worshipped the dark gods, was buried in the desert, in the earth, in the place where the ground was still alive. His ashes became part of the landscape, part of the dark sun, part of the vision he had spent his life trying to articulate. And then, slowly, the world began to listen. The books that had been banned were republished. The vision that had been rejected was reconsidered. Lady Chatterley's Lover was finally allowed in England in 1960, 30 years after Lawrence's death, after a famous obscenity trial. The prosecution argued the book was degenerate. The defense argued it was a work of art. The jury sided with the defense. The book was freed. And in that freedom, Lawrence was vindicated.
But the vindication came too late. Lawrence never saw it. He died believing he had failed. He died believing the vision had been rejected. He died in exile, censored, misunderstood, mocked. And maybe that's the fate of every prophet, to speak the truth before the world is ready to hear it, to be rejected in life and vindicated in death, to die alone with the vision intact. Lawrence's life was a long tragedy: sickness, poverty, exile, censorship, loneliness. The prophet rejected by his own civilization, the teacher ignored by his students, the visionary mocked by the blind. He gave everything. He held nothing back. He spoke the truth even when the truth destroyed him. And yet, in his collapse, there is a lesson. The lesson is this: genius without rest becomes self-destruction. Clarity without softness becomes fracture. Prophecy without community becomes exile. Lawrence burned too bright. He demanded too much. He refused to compromise, and the refusal killed him.
He is a warning and an invitation. A warning against carrying the vision alone. An invitation to speak the truth even when the world rejects it. A warning against dying for your vision, an invitation to live for it. His final poem, The Ship of Death, is a meditation on dying, on the journey into the dark, on the return to the underworld, on the dissolution of the self. And it ends with a question, a hope, a whisper. Oh, build your ship of death, for you will need it. Because we are all dying. We are all making the journey. We are all returning to the dark gods. And the question is, will you make the journey consciously? Will you face death awake? Or will you sleepwalk into the darkness, pretending it is not there? Lawrence made the journey consciously. He faced death with his eyes open. He descended into the underworld, and he wrote from there. He touched the dark gods, and he spoke their names. And even though his body died, the vision did not. The vision is still here, in the words, in the pages, in the fire that burns in anyone who reads him and feels something awaken. He died. The prophet died. The body died. But the prophecy lives. And it is calling still. Calling you back to your body. Calling you back to your blood. Calling you back to the dark gods that are not dead. They are sleeping inside you, waiting. And Lawrence's voice, even in death, is still whispering. Wake up. Come back. Remember who you are.
We live in the world Lawrence warned about, the world where bodies are images, where sex is performance, where desire is content, where connection happens through screens, where we are more connected than ever and more alone than ever, where we have forgotten how to touch, where we have forgotten how to be present, where we have forgotten how to think with our blood. Look around. Look at the epidemic of loneliness in the age of social media. Look at the crisis of meaning in the age of information. Look at the emptiness in the age of abundance. Look at the way people scroll through life, consuming images, consuming experiences, consuming other people, never landing, never touching, never becoming real. Lawrence saw this. He saw the severing. He saw the death of blood consciousness. He saw the rise of the disembodied life. And he screamed into the void, "Come back to your body. Come back to your blood. Come back to the earth. Come back to the dark gods." We live in the world Lawrence warned about, the world where bodies are images, where sex is performance, where desire is content, where connection happens through screens, where we are more connected than ever and more alone than ever, where we have forgotten how to touch, where we have forgotten how to be present, where we have forgotten how to think with our blood. Look around. Look at the epidemic of loneliness in the age of social media. Look at the crisis of meaning in the age of information. Look at the emptiness in the age of abundance. Look at the way people scroll through life, consuming images, consuming experiences, consuming other people, never landing, never touching, never becoming real. Lawrence saw this. He saw the severing. He saw the death of blood consciousness. He saw the rise of the disembodied life. And he screamed into the void, "Come back to your body. Come back to your blood. Come back to the earth. Come back to the dark gods." We live in the world of Gerald Crick, the industrial man,
the efficient man, the man who has turned his body into a machine and his soul into data. We optimize, we perform, we curate, we present, we never rest, we never stop. We keep walking through the snow until we freeze. And Lawrence is calling us back. Back to the fire, back to the place where the body is sacred and sex is holy and desire is divine. Back to the moment when two people stop performing and start being. Back to the communion that happens when you stop thinking and start feeling. Back to the dark sun that pulses beneath the surface of your rational mind. This is not nostalgia. This is not a call to return to some imagined past. This is a call to remember what you are. You are not a machine. You are not data. You are not an image. You are blood. You are earth. You are fire. You are the place where the dark gods still live. And they are knocking. Can you hear them?
Lawrence offers no system, no program, no easy answers. He offers only the vision, the invitation, the challenge. He says, stop living in your head. Stop performing your life. Stop consuming experiences. Stop severing yourself from your own body. Stop pretending you are not animal, earth, fire. Come back. Come back to the place where thought dissolves and the blood speaks. Come back to the sex that is not performance but presence. Come back to the body that knows what the mind cannot. Come back to the dark gods. Come back to yourself. And when the world asks you how to live in the age of machines, in the age of screens, in the age of disembodied existence, tell them what Lawrence told you.
The body is sacred. Desire is divine. Sex is the path. The dark gods are not dead. They are waiting inside you, in the place where the blood still moves, in the place where you are still, against all odds, alive. Stand up. Walk outside. Feel the earth beneath your feet. Feel the sun on your skin. Feel the blood moving through your body. Listen. Beneath the noise, beneath the thoughts, beneath the performance, there is a pulse, the dark sun, the voice of the body, the call of the dark gods. Lawrence is whispering, wake up. You are not dead yet. You are alive. You have a body. You have blood. You have desire. You have fire. And the world needs that fire. The world is dying from its absence. Become who you are, the animal, the god, the body that thinks with its blood, the soul that knows the dark sun. This is the teaching. This is the prophecy. This is the call. Come back to your body. The dark gods are waiting.